Ready? Salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the new year. Because of the tragedy that happened, I would like to take a minute of silence for our police officer and for all the other police officers that are helping us. So could you just bow your heads? Thank you. And please keep them in your hearts and in your prayers, their families and all the communities that have been affected by this. We have no action to report out. Oh, yes. We're going to do a discussion on the superintendent's evaluation. We are tabling it until Mr. Sonnery is back. Public communication, agenda and non-agenda items. Any person wishing to comment on agenda and non-agenda items may do so. Please step to the podium and state your name. It would be appreciated if you would limit your comments to 3 minutes. California law prohibits the school board from taking action on any matter which is not on the posted agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the board. Does anyone have something? Per board policy BB 9323, individual speakers may be allowed 3 minutes to address the board on each agenda or non-agenda item. The board may limit the total time for public input on each item to 20 minutes. With board consent, the president may increase or decrease the time allowed for public presentation, depending on the topic and the number of persons wishing to be heard. The president may take a poll of speakers for or against a particular issue and may ask that additional persons speak only if they have something new to add. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move that we approve the agenda with an addition of item 6, an overnight FFA trip to the Modesto.
Second that?
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Information discussion items. District musical performance. We're going to have a performance of the music.
I'm going to suggest that
Come up to the front.
come back this way.
So it's our 13th year. While they're getting ready back there and finishing some stuff up, we have 66 students here in the show, ranging from 4th grade all the way up to seniors in high school. Tonight I have with us Solomon Bell, Eric Rodriguez, Evan Gutierrez, Zoe Munoz, David Fernandez, JC Bravo, Callie Reeves, Angel Torres, Ziggy Garcia, JD Horton, Devin Bell, Marion Laurent, Corbin Moore, Jaden Sotelo, Cooper Reeves, Gracie Kimbrough, Lori Culpepper, Brian Villanueva, and Taylor Eckstein. They'll be performing for you tonight. And one of the things that was special this year that happened for us is we were the recipients of an Institute for Teaching grant from the CTA union. It's their big state one. We received $16,000 in funding from them. So we've been able to do a lot of different things that we would never have been able to do without that funding, because it was like just a little gift. We get to reapply again this year to see if we get another set of those grants. I'm just waiting for the person who was supposed to come out already, and she hasn't done it yet. I have no problem doing that, and you all.
Yeah, really? Okay.
So, Meta. Meta.
Uh-oh.
Did she run away? It is about the Newsboys strike, the Children Crusades of the New York Times. So we have a lot of different. Oh, here she comes.
Hello!
Hello, and welcome to my theater.
Apparently she thinks it's her thing.
Now, before we begin, I would like to know, is there a Randy Philpott in the room? Thank you for buying our tickets to our show.
Oh,
Now may I introduce our newsies.
What are they doing?
My newsies are going to be performing Carrying the Banner.
Hey, that's my cigar!
You'll steal or nada.
Hey, look, it's bad son at the zoo. I thought that I'd surprise my mother.
If you can find her,
Who asked you?
they'd say moving like a hippie used to. You new selling spot, got any ideas?
From Ottawa Valley to the harbor, there's easy pickings guaranteed.
Try anything, they're rock or farmer. They almost all knows how to read.
It's a crooked game we're playing, one will never lose. Long as suckers don't mind paying, just to get their news.
Ain't it a fine life, carrying the banner through it all? Fine life, carrying the banner tough and tall. When that bell rings, we go spreading wishes, breeze as free as fishes. Sure beats washing dishes, what a fine life, carrying the banner home for all.
Well, hello, beautiful. I've never seen you around here before.
Step aside, Romeo. Nothing what concerns you here. Morning, miss. May I just doing the latest news?
The paper isn't out yet.
I'd be delighted to bring it to you personally.
I've got a headline for you. Cheeky boy gets nothing for his trouble.
That's what makes like a district. I'm crushed.
Hey, Crutchy, what's your leg say? Gonna rain?
No rain. Partly cloudy by evening.
They oughta bottle this guy.
Yeah, and the lip sells 50 papes a week all by itself. I don't need the lip to sell papes. I got personality. It takes a smile that spreads like butter, the type what turns a lady's head. It takes an orphan with a stutter,
Who's also blind?
And you.
and dead.
Summer stinks and winter's freezing when you work outdoors. Start out sweating and gut sneezing, in between it pours. Fine life, carrying the banner with the fine life, carrying the banner with your patience, tossing out a freebie to the patience, tossing out a freebie.
What's the hold up? Wait, it makes me antsy. I like slimming chancy.
Hard
say anything I have to. Cause they're 2 for a penny. If I say too many, weasel just makes me eat 'em after. Got a feeling that the headline high supposed to be a headline fake. So gonna sell like we was giving them away. Bet your dinner is a doozy. Got a pistol back and floozy. Who knows how to make a newsies day? You wanna move that next edition? Give us an earthquake or a war. You never hear that ain't news no more. Uptown to Grand Central Station, down to City Hall. We improve our circulation, walking till we fall. We'll all be out there, carrying the betterment to men. We're always out there, soaking every something that we can. As the headlines, newsies on a mission, kill the competition, sell the next edition. We'll be out there, carrying the banner. See us out there, carrying the banner. Always out there, carrying the banners.
Hey, look, they're putting up the headline.
I hope it's really bloody with a nice clean picture.
The trolley strike? Not again. 3 weeks of the same story.
They're killing us with that snoozer.
Make way, step aside.
Dear me, what is that unpleasant aroma? I feel the sewer may have backed up during the night. Or it could be the Delancey brothers.
Hey, Oscar, word on the street says you and your brother took money to beat up striking trolley workers.
So, it's honest work.
Go cracking the heads of defenseless workers?
I take care of the guy who takes care of me.
And your father one of the strikers?
Yes, he didn't take care of me. You want some of that too, you lousy crip?
Now that ain't nice, Morris.
Yeah, fight to one. Jack stunk some.
Yeah.
You know, one day you might find you got a bum game of your own. How'd you like it if we picked on you? Why don't we find out?
We're always out there, carrying the betterment to men. We're always out there, soaking every sucker that we can. Here's the headline, newsies on a mission, kill the competition, sell the next edition. We'll be out there, carrying the banner. See us out there, carrying the banner. Always out there, carrying the banner.
The vast majority of the group that was up there tonight are also part of my leadership team that we started this year. They gave up their Tuesdays for about 10 weeks, with all in that newspaper that must be out of your hands. They gave up their Tuesday nights from 6 o'clock to 11 o'clock every night, but I also invested for tech classes, leadership stuff that we're doing while we're going out there. So our show opens on February 8th. We are almost sold out. I believe we are under 10.
Got 15.
We got 15 tickets left at this point in time for our opening night gala. It's a $35 dinner one. The cups this year are really cool, and they really are. And you can find them online on our Facebook page. And then February is our opening, then February 9th and 10th, and then the following weekend as well. And as it says in the headline, in case you ask where they get, we are the first group in Stanislaus County, and technically in Merced County and in the Central Valley that we're putting on newsies in this area. Nobody else. We were last year when we made the announcement that we didn't know what we were doing. I really didn't know. We closed and then they got the rights and we were the first group to sign up in the area and they lock it out. So we are the first ones to do it. So we're kind of excited.
That was fantastic. Thank you.
a backflip up here, but I'll let so we're going to go ahead and start with our choosing civility student. So I'd like to call up Jacqueline Aguilar. So I have a little blurb that here I'll read about Jacqueline, but I wanted to open that, you know, a lot of times our teachers, because they only see students when they're in 6th grade, when they're in 7th grade, and when they're in 8th grade, but I put out the email to everybody to say, you know, I'd like, if you've had Jacqueline in class, you know, provide me a little bit of feedback, and overwhelmingly, it was very consistent on the things that Jacqueline exemplifies. She's a hardworking student who exemplifies the choosing civility principles. She is a pleasure to have in class and consistently has a positive attitude. And not only does she have this positive attitude, she is a positive influence on her peers, and that's not easy to do in middle school. Her positive disposition, whether she's working with a pair or within a table team, is contagious to those around her. She listens to others and is always respectful of both their thoughts and of their time. She is kind to all, and as a student, you won't hear complaining or placing blame on others. And this is why Jacqueline was chosen as Yolo's choosing civility student. Okay, so at this time, I'd like to call Ms. Decatur, Mr. Santor, and all of the other YOLO students from Student Council, our TOSCA class, our NHD, and our GATE and journalism to go ahead and all come up here, please. So I'm gonna start by introducing Brandy Decatur, who will start by introducing our first group of students, and these are students from our journalism and our student council class.
Journalism's been up to some really cool things I'm here to talk about. First is our individual chief, Jacqueline.
Hello, my name is Jessie Luna. I'm the editor-in-chief of this year's Yolo Middle School Yearbook and Journalism class. Today, I'm accompanied by Alice Earl, our newspaper leader. Today, we're going to be explaining to you our yearbook and journalism class at Yolo Middle School.
Our class is student-led and self-driven class. Our class is full of different leadership roles that everyone can acquire over time if you can prove you're a responsible, self-directed learner.
Last year, our yearbook and journalism class placed 4th in the nation in a life pitch competition, earning a distinguished merit award. This year, our yearbook group is run by myself and Newman-Crows. This class is a mirror of a workspace. Students are required to be responsible and finish tasks that are given to them. In addition to producing the YOLO yearbook, our class has raised $1,300 selling task ads. This year, funds support our local scholarships programs.
Being the leader of newspaper has given me insight to why my fellow leaders act and say as they do. As a leader, I have learned more responsible and furthered my future career as a writer. In the future, I hope to be a successful author and publish multiple books. Being a newspaper has taught me how to finalize and write a good article. I've also developed essential leadership skills to lead a team to academic victory. I'm thankful to have had this experience.
We say thank you from the yearbook and journalism class at Yolo Coastal.
Thank you. Okay, up next, student council will be presenting on just a couple of things that we've done this year. We've done many activities, but there are 3 that we're going to highlight tonight.
Hi, my name is Daphne Lopagama. I'm an 8th grader at Yolo Middle School, and these are my school student council peers. For Penny's portfolio, we raised a total of $1,474.31. Our goal was to raise more money than the money we raised in the year 2017 and 18, and we successfully achieved it. In the year 2017 and 18, we raised about $300, so we made a big improvement. Some teachers took this competition really serious. I remember when the 30th used to go to Mr. Sanford's room and tell the 8th graders that they were going to be defeated. And I remember when Mr. Sanford went into the defeaters room and said that the 8th graders were going to win the 7th graders. The competition was fierce. Overall, the 8th graders raised the most amount of money this year. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jacob Lewis. I'm student at Yolo. Student council. Today I'm going to talk to you about the food nutrition field trip. Thank you all for making this great event happen. Me and my fellow classmates loved this field trip. We learned about so many things such as food offered by NCLUSD, plants that could be grown, and more. We love that you guys got all these great companies down there to show us a thing or two about what proper food nutrition looks like now. As a result of this field trip, students now appreciate the healthy choices the district provides for us on a daily basis. Hello, my name is Kaylee Casey, and I'm a member of the student council body. To honor Officer Singh, student council made a thank you card and bought a cake. The next day, we had Justin Mello go to the police station and drop it off. Justin said that he shook each officer's hand and thanked them for their service. Although not all of us may have known Officer Singh personally, we knew him publicly. Officer Singh was a great man. He was a hero, a friend, but most importantly, he was our family. He was a part of the community that we know and love. After seeing everyone come together from not just Newman, not just Stanislaus County, and not just California, but other officers from all around the United States was really touching. Seeing people that might not have known him personally but have seen him before or have heard of him made me think that he was a really loved person. He was a great friend to everyone and was willing to sacrifice his life to save the people he loved, the city he loved, and the country he loved. Student council was honored to show appreciation for our police force. Thank you for your time. And now to lead us into our video, I'd like to introduce Corey Santor, who works with our GATE students as an ELA history teacher at Yolo.
Good evening. As you've all seen already, Yolo is teeming with activity. We have lots of things that are happening. And we're going to highlight 3 things that are new, unique, and challenging for us this year. The first is Mr. Cater and myself have gotten a grant through TSCA, and we have implemented that into breaking down the walls of the classroom, giving the kids experiences that they may not have had before. Next, with inspiration from Randy, we took on a project with the Newman Museum, and my National History Day students are digging through the archives at the museum, finding Newman history, and really starting to get connected to our community. And finally, the last thing is that our GATE program, we totally changed it this year. It's all STEM driven, and you'll see some videos of how that has been a challenging thing for our students, making them think outside the box, do things that are unorthodox, to come up with a common sense solution to things. So to start us out, Jackson Goodyear will start us out.
Hi. My experience with Ben and Jerry's and Mr. Santor and Mr. Gibbs' class was unlike anything that I've ever done in a classroom before. Instead of copying something down with pen and paper or reading a word problem and finding an answer for it, I was given an opportunity to speak with someone on the opposite side of the country with an entirely different grade, where they could share their thoughts, and we could collaborate. Overall, it was a great experience. It's definitely something new and something that I would love to do again.
Good evening, my name is Yolo. I am an 8th grader at Yolo Middle School, and today I'll be talking about what we have been doing this year in my English language arts class. Our teacher, Mr. Santor, along with Mr. Prager, a 7th grade English teacher, asked our classes to complete an organizer about Ben and Jerry. An organizer that we will later use for discussion. Before I talk more about our assignment, I want to give you all a brief introduction about Ben and Jerry. Ben and Jerry is an American company that manufactures ice cream, frozen yogurt, and sherbet that began on May 5th, 1978. Ben and Jerry's main company is located in Burlington, Vermont. For this assignment, we were to complete an organizer that we will later use for a discussion between the 7th and 8th graders. The 3 parts of the Ben and Jerry's approach was their social mission, 3 of the products they source, to ensure what happens to their farmers, the goal of the program, how it benefits the community, how they treat the cows, and how they treat the farm. The discussion was done through Skype. At first we had some difficulties, we were unable to hear them and had poor connection. After a few days, our teachers were able to fix the problem and were able to discuss along those lines much better. During the discussion, our teachers would choose students one by one to go to the microphone and to share what we had written down on our Ben and Jerry's organizer. This discussion took about a week. Once the assignment and discussion was completed, our teachers told us that we would go on a virtual field trip. A tour guide for our virtual field trip showed us around the company and was even kind to show us the process of making ice cream. They had huge machines and were a mix of all the flavors. Students were allowed to ask questions once the tour was over. There were so many interesting questions that were asked. For example, one classmate asked, how does this benefit your community? Our tour guide said, it benefits our community by people not doing their job right and letting the manager and boss down. After the tour was over, our teachers let us try their ice cream. There are too many flavors to choose from, but I chose vanilla, chocolate fudge brownie, and chocolate chip cookie dough. The flavors were delicious. We all thank our teachers for allowing us to eat Ben and Jerry's ice cream. This was a very interesting assignment, and I can say that I really enjoyed it. Hello, my name is Alondra Perez, and I am a student of National History Day class. National History Day has changed a lot over the years. Last year, my group and I participated, and their theme was conflict and compromise. My group and I chose Mahatma Gandhi and his whole march. This year, our National History Day, Mr. Santor has changed it to triumph and tragedy, and about Newman's history. We have a big advantage in this because we live in Newman, and from my experience, I've lived here my whole life, and it's very fun and interesting to learn more about my community and the town that I live in. This helps me communicate more and connect more with my community because I can socialize with the people that live here longer than me and that have experienced and gone through the tragedies that have led to the beautiful community known as Newman. We also have a lot more resources such as newspapers. We get to go to museums, and we get to go to the index that we did not have access to when we were learning about and researching about Mahatma Gandhi. This is very interesting and astonishing how this little town of Newman has a great history behind, and it's so little and interesting that it has so little people, and it still has so many interesting triumphs and tragedies that have led to this beautiful community that we have now. Thank you.
Eladio, and I am an 8th student. Tonight, I will explain about the project we did. But first, I'm going to tell you a little bit about great thing in Skate. We learned a lot of stuff that help us on life, like one example would be, I don't know, building, technology, coding, all that kind of stuff. Well, we didn't do that on the first project, but it was still awesome. Well, the project was about, it was like a trying to stand right here. It was a hydraulic arm that picks up a ball and throws in the trash can. Well, my project turned out as well as Frank did, but still we got some problems. Like both my partners were fighting each other for some past problem they got between them. Somehow I keep them together, working, telling them to get along. And after a long time, we finished the project. It turned out really well, and I was happy with both of my partners, and both of my partners were really happy too. Thank you very much. Of all the great things that are going on at Yolo. I'd like to thank Mr. Santor and Ms. Decatur for really helping organize this and getting our students together. And to all the Yolo students, thank you for being here. And to our parents who, got our students here, thank you.
So often we hear about our junior high student who sits around and just does nothing. This is a far cry to not doing anything. I would love to have tried some of those. I know I One of the jobs of your school board is to evaluate themselves and, sorry. My their name first. Yeah.
The OHS Math Club will be having presentations to 6th graders of Yolo Middle School about the long-lasting effects of tobacco, vaping, and other addictive substances. The Math Club will be receiving professional training on how to give a proper presentation. The training will take place towards the end of this month, while the actual presentation will be during February. The Helping Hands Club, along with a few other schools from around Stanislaus County, have been contributing their ideas and their networking skills to help make the Stanislaus County 2019 Youth Summit come to life. Helping Hands hopes to spread the word about the summit on campus and successfully put out the registration forms within a month or so. Rotary's annual speech contest will take place this Thursday. There will be a sophomore, a junior, and a senior from OHS taking part in this event.
Thank you. Your school board, we don't just sit up here and come once a month and then walk away. We work together as a team, and we disagree and agree at the same time. We agree to disagree and learn from each other. But we do an evaluation every year, just like we do one of Mr. Philpott. The board self-evaluates them ourselves, and it's a way for us to get to know each other better and to put some of our thoughts down into words. So what we did was we did an evaluation about 2 months ago, I guess, and I'm not going to go over each one of the little parts, but we put a commentary down. So I'm going to read it, and then we're going to give you some of the reasons why, and why we might have said it, what we're concerned about, and we are only effective if you give us information. If you just sit back and say, yes, you're doing a good job, until we're not, then we don't know what to do. So if you can give us direction as to what you want, any one of the 5 of us, we are welcome and open for your suggestions or criticisms. One of the first things we wrote was, as we strive to govern effectively, we have the greatest control over our own actions, behaviors, and attitudes. This section of self-evaluation is an opportunity for board members to set personal goals that will enhance the governance team collective efforts. Now, I don't know about anybody else but myself. When I had to do this for a professor, I never felt like I could give myself an A+. It's always like, you can't be perfect, you have to learn from it. So we all evaluate each other differently. We evaluate ourselves as a board. So one of ours was to support the superintendent's vision for success. Can I have a board member or somebody saying how we do that or how we like to do it?
I'll speak.
Oh, go ahead.
I don't think I wrote that one down, but what the heck.
I think it's a
I think that what we try to do is, we pay attention to each of these presentations that we see here. We hear the superintendent talk about what he'd like to accomplish this year, next year, on into the future. And I think that most of us act as a spokesperson, at least in our little subcommunity, among our family, our friends, our neighbors, and try to explain where we think the school is going. And we do that not just from our point of view, like, this is what Tim Bazar hopes to accomplish, because Tim Bazar really is just one member of a board. It's really what Superintendent Philpott has crystallized or distilled and spoken to here at the board meetings that generally we're here to support. He asked for our guidance, he asked for our input, and we take action sort of as a collective group. But he's the one that usually actually voices the direction we're going, and generally, obviously, we have to agree with it, or we can say, hey, wait a minute, it doesn't make any sense. And then once we have heard that, I think we act as spokespeople in the community for that type of thing.
Are there any other comments? One of the things we do have is we have a superintendent that has an open door, both to us and to students and to our parents and anybody else that's in the community. And I don't think I've ever seen it blocked. Another one is to support and ensure board policies. Now, we have 2 huge binders like this big. And when I became a board member, I thought I had to read every single page before I got there, and I highlighted and everything. Somebody looked at me like I was crazy, because it's constantly changing. But what we do is support and ensure the board policies. Some of them are dictated by the state, and other ones are dictated by our community, and follows school safety. And another part is the maintenance of our schools. We try to look at the school's maintenance, and we try to talk to Mr. Vargas and tell him what we might see or why is something this way. So we go about it and we have committees, we do LCAP where parents, if we could get more people to come to those meetings. So we try to make sure that your schools are safe, both physically, the buildings, and also with the personnel around. Does anybody else have?
I think that a lot of what we get to with supporting our policies is not trying to go back and go over something again. But we have some standards that we've set that everybody's trying to work from and make sure that it's easy to come up here every week and be, oh, I'm excited about this week. It's like, well, we've got a policy, we're doing that, we're working on it. Let's continue on with what we're doing instead of trying to upset the apple cart.
And sometimes somebody looking at it with a different eyes give us better ideas to do things. Another part is to continue to give support to our teachers. We keep hoping that we do that for you. The new programs that are coming out. I mean, I just look at what, like the journalism class or our theater and arts or our invisible people that are around. What our children are doing. We don't give them enough thank yous for it. A lot of times it's, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. We have an absolutely fantastic district. Not only teachers, but our students and our parents that support. And we could not do our job without their help.
President Conforti, I wanted to go back for a second to the safe school line that was right above here. And I know a few people watch us at home and members of the audience. I just wanted to comment on the fact that even though this community obviously just went through just a tragic event with the death of Corporal Singh, I still feel as a board member and as a parent with several kids in school that our schools are extremely safe. And someone asked me at a dentist's office recently about the officer's death, and what I said, and nobody has to agree with me, but what I thought is that in so many ways it was a random event. It happened in our community, but it could have happened anywhere. It's so jarring to people who, because it did happen here, and it seems so out of keeping with what we experience most days, and I know it's out of keeping with what goes on in our schools. I am absolutely convinced our schools are safe, and I hope that the community feels that same way.
Thank you, Mr. Bazar. Another one was that we made the statement that we evaluate what's happening with our students, with our teachers, with our staff, with our administrators, and when problems arise, we're not afraid to voice it, but we don't argue about it. We discuss it, and there's a big difference between arguing and discussing. We just saw it with some of our young students where one young man talked about how his two partners weren't working right. Sometimes we have to have a mediator. Sometimes we have to step back and don't take it personally. And it's a big part because someone can say, well, that's not working on the floor. It didn't. Have to look back, and I think all of us do that. We all get caught sometimes in the I instead of the we, but for the most part, this board is more into the we and what everybody's doing. And we evaluate what we do continually. I mean, it's amazing. Maybe one-on-one sometimes, talking to someone, and we don't get upset if someone tells us you need to change. Change is good.
And to go back to what we were talking about, we've had a couple events that have occurred over this last semester. And I am so proud of the fact that we've been very proactive about trying to get counseling, and it can't just happen at the higher grades. You want to have it in the lower grades, which we have done, and that really helps try to alleviate some of the problems that may grow to be bigger as they get older. So I'm very proud of that as far as a safety issue. I think we've worked very hard on safety and counseling and communication, and I hope you all feel that way too. And so, as we've always said, if you ever want us to come to your classroom for anything, please let us know. We don't want to butt in and disrupt you, but we would like to come, so.
one of the things was that, wanted to watch classrooms, and I know as a former classroom teacher, sometimes when a board member or an administrator came in, it was like, okay, am I on show now? Do I have to do something different? If you know me and if you've seen me in your classroom, most of the time you have to find me because I'm on the floor. I just
Kneeling.
trying to find something, or working in with children. Children are such a way to invigorate me. Being as old as I am, I need that sometimes.
I think that one of the things that we talked about it on several of these, there's one here about watching more classroom instruction. There's a lot about focusing on student achievement. And what you're talking about going in and seeing what's happening in the schools. Ultimately, the way this is supposed to work, if the community's unhappy with what's going on in the schools, they fire us at the ballot box. And the new board comes in and gives the superintendent a new direction and changes, most of you are employees, changes what you're asked to do on your daily basis. What the board brings is publicity. I mean, if nothing else, we're pretty good at being stuffed shirts. And we come in and it brings publicity to something. When we bring something to the meetings, it shows the public and it shows everybody here what's important. And so that's why I think we see some things like things that reflect what's going on in the classroom. What do the facilities actually look like? And it's important for us to get out and do that because that's what makes people important. If you look back at our attendance, most districts would kill for our attendance. We take a personal interest in attendance every meeting. And to the point of, we looked at it and we said we're doing well, and a couple of years ago we said, hey, you got some of these kids that are slipping through the cracks, even though everything, we added another category, we're paying attention to chronic absenteeism. And looking to see that same kind of public and priority put on student achievement is, I think, one of the things that we're after, one of the things that we can do well, and one of the things that as we evaluate ourselves, I think we have to ask, what are we putting out there that's most important, and how are we reflecting that in the community?
And with those awards, like it's not only students, we look at the school as a whole, we look at the administrators, the teachers, so it's not like we're looking at one little part of the puzzle, we're looking at the whole puzzle. One person, someone had said, watch classroom instruction to a greater extent. Sometimes, like I said, walking into a classroom, you don't want to disrupt it, but watching some of the videos that we've seen, they are amazing. I mean, I'd like to take and put them on the jumbo screen at like Giant Stadium. I guess it's not Giant Stadium anymore. Oracle. But there are other districts around here that don't realize what we do. We are a forerunner in the valley. Not only our students, but our superintendent is a good leader to help us do that. So, and so are our principals and hopefully the board at the same time.
One of the things that we worked on, this is actually even before Mr. Philpott joined us, was the idea that if we walk into your classroom, does everything stop? Because one of the things that we thought about and looked at in professional development and supporting teachers and good classroom evaluation by an adult ought to be able to walk into a classroom and the classroom ought to keep going. Some teachers have a greeter, some the students don't notice an adult comes and goes. And that's something that I think we kind of set forward as something we wanted to see a few years ago, that we had that collaborative kind of environment. And when we walk into a classroom these days, I don't think we see things disrupted. And so that's kind of a success as we go by. We kind of wanted to see that in our classrooms, that our adults could thrive, our kids could thrive, because it's a normal part of an event. It wasn't like my classroom, no other adult ever walks in. And I think we've been very successful in that.
And we as a whole like to go to activities. If we're invited, we go, and sometimes even if we're not, we go. And then there are times when someone, because they may have a job or they may have other obligations, they can't attend it. But we try to share among ourselves. We've been talking about student achievement. We're very aware of how our students are doing and what they may need or what they're doing. And we do this every single month. There are not lot of school districts to have a whole group come up and talk about what they're doing, or have a presentation like we did with the Newsies coming. So, I mean, that's really a positive, and we get to see the achievement. Yes, we do look at a lot of the numbers, but numbers aren't always the end of it all. Talking to the students or seeing their work, the artwork that we have, seeing what they're doing, like, instead of saying, oh, I can't do it, I've gotta make that all go in the basket, it's not gonna do it, I'll throw it in the garbage. No, we're really leading our leaders to something else, to work out a problem without becoming so frustrated that you just toss it away.
And student achievement is clearly seen whenever we've had the 100% graduation at the high school. And I remember when Janice and I first got on the board, we would start off, and you would start off with all the maybe contentious stuff that you had to deal with. And now, whenever we start off with being able to watch something like the Newsies, or watch these students in the GATE program, watch them being showcased, it has really started off our board meetings in a positive way that helps kind of set it. So we are so appreciative of that. We know it's extra work for you to do these things, but we're so glad you do.
I think that student achievement is something that in the past we've maybe passed off more than we should have. We get done, we get some of these annual reports, and we're looking down and just being horrified. You know, our students are improving, we're seeing great improvements. But then sometimes you look back and you say, well, just exactly how many students in that grade level are reading at that grade level? It's like, ooh, maybe. And so I feel like this is something that I really appreciate that Mr. Philpott, this is something we looked at last year. I think Mr. Philpott's bringing this to us this year, that there's going to be more reviewing how the achievements are going. Because I think sometimes, you know, you just pull up a number at the end of the year, and it's kind of startling how many of our kids, you know, they may all be graduating, but are they ready to move on in the numbers that we expect? You look at the master plan for for higher education in California, you go, well, are 12% or 8% ready for UC? And there's been years in the past that they weren't. And I think that we're seeing some real improvement, but I think that Mr. Philpott's going to be bringing that in a more focused way, and hopefully we'll be looking at First of all, I don't know about the rest of you, but I think the dashboard is basically useless as a management document. It tells us it's a look in the rearview mirror. We all know what happens if you steer by the rearview mirror. But we absolutely have a lot of work that we're doing, that you guys are working hard at, that we're concentrating on taking a look at. And see, the dashboard shouldn't be a surprise to any of us. We ought to be able to look at our first quarter numbers and say, we're going to have a problem in this area, and then you all get to work and do your professional thing, and hopefully some of those problem areas are fixed at the end, and if they're not, then that's up to Mr. Philpott to bring to us and say, where do we need to reallocate resources or something. So by, again, bringing that public focus onto these student achievement things, sometimes we won't look at some of these required reports and go, really, that few kids are able to do math in this grade or that grade?
And sometimes we get the report so late. I mean, if you take a test in May and you find out in October, it's not really, I mean, your class has already changed, they're already gone, they're already spread in different places. So we look at it continually. We're constantly, and we're working on ways to look at it even in a better way for us one-to-one.
So speaking of achievement, what word are we at now? How many? Perfect steps. I won't spoil yours. Right, never mind. No.
And wait. One of the things too, that with our leadership at the administrative level, to allow our teachers and our administrators to go to things like, places like model schools, and to the workshops that we try to bring to you. We'd like to know if, I know a lot of people, yeah, that's really good, but we never really hear too much until we see the excitement in your children. Please keep us informed. We're only as good as what our constituency asks of us. You tell us to climb a tree higher, I'll try climbing. And so will the rest of the board members. So we really appreciate everything you've done. And This is public knowledge, right? Yes, so it's on the website. And I can shut down the website very easily. But thank you. Does anyone else have something else?
You know, one of the things that we had talked about in this was the budgetary stuff. And school districts are so controlled by the state. And how Mrs. Mendoza figures all these things out, but I know as you look past the reports, she's very good at keeping us out of trouble. But one of the things that had come up was involving the board more in the budget. And that's the idea of getting the budget out of, I think it's 105 pages or something by the time you do the required budgets that we have to review. And it'll be questions like, you know, have you increased in enrollment by more than 0.5%, but not more than 3%? And you get through all this stuff, and it's like, this doesn't help us help kids. This doesn't help us allocate resources amongst the programs that are succeeding or aren't succeeding. And so the idea of involving the board in the budget when it's at the, okay, there's 90% of the budget that's mandated by either the state or by the contracts that we've agreed to with our folks that work for us that actually do the work. But that last 10%, where's it go? Does it get, you know, do we emphasize facilities? Do we look at where these other things we've talked about? Well, your budget's where your rubber meets the road. Are we going to do a new thing here? Or are we going to kind of, and so I think that the LCAP process has really changed this. We've got, you know, it's brought it past the board all the way to the public. And so I think that this is something that as we looked at in the past, we get these 105-page reports, but kind of the decisions about, well, do we paint the schools because they look kind of shabby is long since left out of that and gets lumped into a big, so I think with the LCAP, that's going to be a lot better for us to be able to be involved as we're, you know, do we hand out Chromebook book passes where kids can, you know, download 17,000 novels? Or do we keep some paperback novels because it's important to have, if somebody thinks that paperback novels are important, it's important to have those. So those are the decisions that we can make as a group, and I think that some of us, many of us, probably all of us believe that there's a place for paperbacks, and if we just bought Chromebook subscriptions, we might be not getting done what needs to be done. So that's the part of the budget, the English teacher part of the budget, not the accounting professional did your contra account for your depreciation match what it was supposed to be on the schedule. But okay, you've got 10% of this money that you have available left if you're lucky. How'd you spend it if you get your best use of it? Right.
Mrs. Mendoza, nutrition? We took a little time.
Yes. She was patiently waiting. I'm on my third cough drops on the time, if there's a double nipples. The reason I'm coming to tonight, we'll be in the process of renewing our Sodexo contract about this time of the year. And after doing some extensive analysis, it's looking like we should go back to what we call self-op, which means we would self-manage our own program. So I did some analysis through using last year's numbers and breaking down where we spent our money last year. We spent about a third on salaries and benefits. We spent about a third, a little over a third, actually a little over half on food supplies. And we spent about 15% on our Sodexo contract, which equals about $350,000. So that profit margin went into their coffers and not into ours. Even though we ended the year in the black, that's still troubling to me because I think that we're at the point where we can get changed. So you can see where last year where our revenue came in and went out. And last year, our indirect costs would have been about $85,000 that could have come back into the general fund. If we had charged that, we would have shown a loss of about $30,000. So we didn't charge indirect costs. So looking at if we had gone self-op last year, and what we would try to do in the future, is if we added a director, I'm not saying that I could do this without a director, absolutely not. If we added a director, and we assumed that our food costs would go up slightly because of, part of the allure of Sodexo in the first place was their purchasing power. This is a multinational company. We would have to do our own, proposals for purchasing our own, through our own avenues, whether it be through co-ops or through direct bidding with companies. We'd also like to put more money into professional development for staff. There are a lot of really good conferences besides just the annual convention, but there are there's ones right now in Austin, going on. And so we look at the expenditures, you see the expenditures are about the same, but if we took the 5% indirects, that'd be almost $95,000. And the reason it's different is because there are things that you can't charge indirect on our management contract. So that's why it's different. And we still show an increase to the fund balance of about $53,000. So there will be some one-time costs if we were to go this way. We would have to pay to buy back our food inventory because when we began our contract in 2006, they purchased all of our food inventory from us. And then when we paid for them, we pay them, they pay our vendors for the food. So we'd have to buy back our any inventory, which would be whatever it is on June 30th, probably about $30,000 to $35,000 is usually what we end. We'd have to replace all the marketing that's in our school. If you've seen in the cafeterias, there's decorations and things. We'd have to take all that out and redo that ourselves. We'd have to hire a director. We'd have to buy them a computer. We'd have to buy some and even else's software to do all of the compliance portion. We do the marketing. And one of the biggest advantages, and one place where we're kind of frustrated right now, my staff is a little bit frustrated, is we need some more creative control. My staff is we're seeing products that are available that we know our students would like, and we know would drive our participation. And we're not able to access it because of purchasing contracts that are in place. We saw a couple of things. We were able to make a couple of changes, but it basically is like going through Congress to get anything added. And that moves too slowly for my staff. We like the ability to change much quicker and to add things as we see that we need to add them. So, and one of the advantages would be some flexibility in our purchasing. We did it locally. And then eventually is just more funds available to reinvest in our program. Right now we have a walk-in at Monroe that was going to be replaced in July for the tune of nearly $60,000. It's a huge investment for us. So, but there are other things that come along that we want to be able to take advantage of as we go. So, just not looking necessarily for a vote, but just for information. Yes, sir.
The existing employees who perform food service now remain the same.
Yes, the employees that work at the school work for the district. We have one general manager that works for Sodexo. And we'll be posting, we'll establish a timeline to post for a food service director.
So in your mind, if you make this switch, the existing employees remain largely the same with that one exception, and then you need one additional manager. Is that sort of what you think would
Yes,
involve
we
the
replacing,
transition?
switching one for another. He's a general manager that works for the company, so we would just be hiring a general manager in his place.
And so when you're,
Yes, that and there are some one-time costs next year as far as the marketing and buying back the inventory.
Ask our student representative for your opinion.
Too much to give, maybe?
Do you prefer more creative food?
I feel like we have a lot of options at the moment. I feel like it's not much. I mean, it'd be nice if there's not like a push for more options.
I don't think it would necessarily be more options, because especially at the high school, we're running 8 to 10 options a day. It'd just be the variety, the things that we are able to procure, and it would be a little, we could spend a little bit more on food costs to get products that we're really, that we know that will drive our participation.
So, do you think you'll do more scratch cooking? I think that was something that maybe years ago that a lot of your staff did more of, and I've heard some, well, Sodexo came and now we get, take a lot more out of the package and serve it. And you think that will change with this, or are you?
Yeah, I do, and I think, we have gone back to that to a degree. So my staff would like to do more, and I think there's a line between a really good prepared product and what can we do from scratch.
Yep.
And you have to weigh, time and labor and cost and things like that, but yes, we are definitely looking at different options. A lot of times my staff is in a lot of groups, online groups, that they see what other districts are doing, and they can download the recipes and things like that, and they've implemented a lot of things like that, so we're not going strictly off of the menu that other districts use. We are bringing some of our own, and they'd like to do more of that.
But I think that's to make parents happy as well.
The purchasing of, because Sodexo had a large way of purchasing food, where as a smaller district, we would have a much smaller ability to purchase. How does it change for us as far as, money?
Well, we anticipate the cost to go up a little bit for food costs, but there are different ways of working with that. We're looking at other districts and piggybacking off of their bids, Sirius, Yolo, Modesto. We are looking at possibly entering into a co-op where several districts join together, and you can piggyback on the co-op as well. So I'm looking at a lot of different options before we go out and put our RFPs out. Luckily, we have our product list, we have all the specs, so that we're getting ready to do that. So we'll know probably by May where our pricing is going. But my staff is very good about controlling the food costs, and they're very flexible with each other, where there's a lot of sharing, there's a lot of, if somebody has 5 cases of something and somebody run out, they're calling around and not necessarily adding it back to the order. So there's a lot of ways you can control it.
I think this is gonna make a lot of people really happy, and one of the things, we're at this kind of a funny size. We're not a small district anymore, and as we get bigger, it makes sense, and as a business person, I know I like to control everything that I can about my business. I think you guys bringing this control back where it's about the kids and the district instead of about, outside corporation, I think that benefits our kids and our district.
Yes, and I would like to say, I really appreciate the support that they've given us over the years, because in 2006, when they came in, we couldn't have done it ourselves. But now we are to the point where this is feasible, and I wouldn't propose this unless I have the staff to back it up, so.
Facilities, Mr. Barton?
Actually, so I'm going to ask Mr. Vargas to actually come up here. I'm going to kind of walk through some slides. I know Ms. Mendoza is going back to sit at kind of her microphone also. We have some, this is the beginning of our discussion basically about facility needs after we've expended basically everything from Measure P, which is gonna happen fairly soon. Remember the reauthorization for 11 million?
Yeah.
We've pretty much gone through everything but about 5 million of it, which is allocated now for the Yolo building. These aren't exactly in any kind of particular order, but this is actually on Renner. And these are concept ideas that our architects, we kind of talked about some of the issues with our architects, and they kind of drew up some plans, potential plans possibly of what we could do. So in Von Renner, one of the issues is just access at the front of the school. It's not a great turnaround for the buses, not a great turnaround for dropping off kids. What really makes more sense actually is actually where we're at right now is McConnell next to the parking lot. It would make more sense just behind us actually if there was an admin office. And also part of the problem with Von Renner right now is that it's very overcrowded with the cafeteria. So creating another cafeteria facility near that admin office would make sense as well. To do that, the architect basically kind of had to turn the track, because the track right now kind of goes kind of north-south, and that by changing it so it goes east-west, you get a little bit more room and don't lose any of the playground area. We also have a lot of portables right now that are kind of in the center of campus. You can kind of see where the restrooms are, they're kind of near there. And we eventually need to raise those, we remove those and replace those with some stick classroom buildings. So those other rectangles represent classroom buildings of about 8 different classrooms in each wing, if you will. So there'd be kind of a phase-in of something like this, and we would obviously demolish some portables, put in a stick building, and then the following year. So everything that we do would be kind of over a phase-in of probably over a number of years. I'm just going to kind of run by some of these drawings. This is actually Bonita. Now we're kind of hoping we don't have to do this because we think that actually the housing that's happened actually up in Diablo and around, not much around Crow's Landing, we may have flattened out for a while. But this was what we were worried about for a little bit of time was when we're about 150 out there right now, enrollment. But if we start getting into 175, 180, and then 200, we would have to add some more classrooms out there. And so the concept is that if you look at this drawing, this is looking down on the building, see the old building or existing building right now. There's a wing that's on the left-hand side. That is adjacent to Fink Road. And so one of the things we were trying to do was to buffer the noise from Fink Road to the kind of the courtyard area and play area basically inside of Bonita. Because there's a high probability that Fink Road is going to expand and become even busier. Right. If we needed to, we could add another wing towards the back, would be just north of the cafeteria. There's a portable back there right now that has a 5th grade class in it, so there's a wing back there that could happen there. So just some ideas of how we could actually expand if we needed to. This is Yolo. So the kind of orangish colored building is the building that we hope will go to bid in about a month. And that hopefully we can also start construction on that maybe as early as May. It's not really in the way of classes, and so that we can coordinate off and whatnot. We might be able to start pretty soon. That would actually open up in fall of 2021. So it's a ways off. It takes time to build all these and whatnot. So what they've done is, if you look at the buildings below the amphitheater, they're kind of turned a different way. They're running again east-west. But if we turn the buildings up above, north-south, we can actually fit more classrooms in. The thing that's exciting, as you well know about that building, I think there might be actually this. Well, that's Barrington. Okay, this is actually the floor plan for that building at Yolo. And the thing that's kind of exciting about this, we hired a great art teacher. You see a lot of the work that our students have done and stuff in here. There'll be a kiln in there. There'll be
space basically for products to be stored. There'll also be 2 restrooms for the fields out there. Right now, our ASP that works out there, they have to go into the restrooms all the way towards the cafeteria. So this is a better facility out here. And then it adds 6 regular classroom sizes and stuff as well. So that's kind of exciting. That's the project that's out there. And again, it is that kind of orange space right there. And then we would leave some room out there for future expansion hopefully. I think one of the things we talked about is that little kind of square building that's kind of in between the 2 rectangular buildings, is it in the interim, since there's an art class out there, is to possibly make that into kind of a sculpture garden, if you will, to highlight a lot of the work that's being done by the students in the school. So that's kind of exciting. This is a little busy, but this is the high school. This is really where the next pressure is really happening. I mean, there is the Von Renner needs to be updated because of just the facilities. There is room there, but it's just they're just old. The problem we're having that we're going to have at the high school is the same problem we're having at Yolo. We are using every building right now for classrooms. So we are going to need to do something different. The other thing is that we basically have had the same locker room facilities for a number of years. Some of the people who graduated from Morrison, they go back and can't believe that.
My lock is still on my old locker.
Yeah. It's just probably zoned in there.
It's just the size, it's just not adequate for the amount of students.
So our architects, interesting enough, I'll just kind of walk through some of these changes. Our architects actually, we talked about, the problem is if we start kind of trying to remodel the locker rooms, everything that touches, anything else goes through DSA. We're better off actually adding a locker room, which is C. It's kind of the orange building to the left of the gym, where there'd be a locker room, some, and Matt and I read about this morning, actually, possibly even putting a concession stand for the stadium there with some restrooms for people. That really needs to happen. What that would do is free up the locker room so that we could really gut it, remove things, and there could be a space for possibly a wrestling room, expand the weight room storage in the center area. So there's a lot of possibilities just there. We'd have to move the tennis courts just a little bit east of where the dirt parking lot is right now, which actually is more mud, I think, than dirt right now. But those tennis courts are breaking up right now anyway because of the trees that are nearby. We really need to move those. There's not an ideal place for those where they are currently. And Mr. Bazar, you'll notice that right below that is a pool.
That's J.
That's J.
But I think.
So that's kind of thrown in there as a possibility. What it does is it creates really a sports complex, because with the city property to the left, and you got Newman, and you got our varsity baseball, and you got the softball in the back, and JV fields. You got everything there. In fact, actually, there's a little triangle or trapezoid that's kind of up there called K. What they designed, it's kind of hard to see in the slide, but what they designed was actually is a place for shot put and discus, which really we don't have a facility for that right now. And then trying to recondition the track and make it actually legal, so we can actually have track meets there that are legal. Redoing the ramps on the stadiums because they're not ADA compliant. And then down below and where kind of this parking lot is you notice if you put move tennis courts in, you move a pool in, well now you've eliminated the entrance into the parking lot. So the concept was actually to have an egress and egress for the parking lot that's on Hardin. And so that's kind of where G is right there. It really opens up that area and also creates kind of a natural place for basically where the administration building would be, which is D. More central, easier to kind of direct people into the campus, and also then we're not sure we completely like some of the things they were suggesting, but what they did was they demolished the old library, demolished the administration building and the student union to create kind of more of a courtyard quad area in the center. The two F buildings would be kind of mirrors of kind of the current K and J buildings, if you will. depending on what would go in there. And I think the other thing that was kind of interesting that they suggested was having a bus turnaround on the north side of basically the cafeteria. We own actually that property where the Child Development Center is, and we could actually carve a road around it to the north so that buses could come there and then come out Hardin. Now, remember, someday Hardin's going to be cut through.
Yeah.
So it gives us a lot of options. There might eventually be an elementary school out on that end. So having that kind of flow makes a lot of sense. And then this is Barrington. We finished up this last year. I kind of put those in there because you remember. I think one of the things we want to do again is that we have these placards. We're at the fall festival. We're answering questions. We have a real need for things. And I will tell you this, with all those things I just mentioned, and I'm going to let Matt kind of fill in, because I call it the non-sexy stuff. With all those things, I kind of was estimating what that all looks like. It's about $70 million. Now, I got to tell you, we may not have the ability to do $70 million worth of projects. The purpose here is to get you kind of thinking about what's available, what ideas are there, and then to prioritize based upon what our needs are for enrollment growth and needs for other things, what projects might start first. So, Matt, you want to talk about some of the infrastructure issues?
Yeah, I just want to add to Mr. Philpott's comments with regard to, it's a great opportunity in our district to always be forward-thinking on trying to meet the growth, the needs that we have. We are definitely growing, and we expect that we're going to continue to grow. And as our facilities age, one of the things that we need to consider before we set down a new building is what it's going to tie into. Keep in mind, a lot of the plumbing on the south part of Urstima High School has been there for 45 plus years. And so you want to look at before you put a new building or a new locker room, which I think is vital for the high school. I think it's a great idea to not just look at demoing a building, but we've been talking about how can we repurpose or remodify a building to meet the current needs at Urstima High School. It's more cost effective if we can repurpose. And here's an example. When Mr. Philpott, myself, and the architects sat down, when you redo the plumbing on an existing building that has a concrete slab, you're really paying to dig up old bones. And so if the concrete floor, once the lockers are removed and you remove all the floor drains and so forth, if you just basically cut the water source off the building and just use the building as a foundation for your wrestling, for dance, or whatever practices that you can fit in that facility, you really redesignate a building that was kind of an old dinosaur into something that's just modified into the current need. And then relocating, I think, the locker rooms central more so to not only the gym, we would just be going to the other side of the gym, but also to get maybe the football team a little closer to the football field, and also snacks and food a little closer to our fans that come and support our Warrior program. So I think the most important need in our stadium is the restrooms. Mr. Philpott has supported what we have there now, which is better than a lot of high schools have, but it's one of those things that we can always do better. And I think our taxpayers will support because we really do plan these things out. We don't just make decisions, from the hip. We really plan them out. We're trying to meet the needs of not only the high school, but all of the schools across our district. So updating the plumbing, for example, the electrical supply. Those will all be things that will be part of these as we begin the discussion of engineered estimates for what these costs are going to be. Because I think before we go to the voters, we need to continue to do our due diligence in identifying what the costs will be so they know what they're getting for their money.
What about, I keep reading about schools that are being redesigned and the asbestos. So you've been talking a lot about that and how expensive it is, but it's going to be expensive no matter what because it's got to be taken care of.
You're 100% right, but we're actually in a pretty good pole position because we began asbestos abatement in this district about 18 years ago. And for example, Benita as an example, it had old tile under the old carpet. And we could have simply removed the carpet and placed new carpet over that, but we made the decision to spend a little bit of money and have the entire school vacant. So to be able to state that you have a school like Benita that's asbestos free, that's not a concern if we do any modifications there. Yeah, what's that, I'm sorry?
Von Renner.
Von Renner, here's what's very interesting about Von Renner, and there's been a lot of people who have come to me as a maintenance director and said, hey, why don't you just demo those old buildings? You're just using them for storage, they're just a waste. Well, keep in mind, we don't get any money from the state for doing a demo. But if you can present a bond to the voters where you're gonna rebuild in that area of state construction, then part of your bid that you receive from a general contractor includes the demo portion. So technically, you are getting funding for that. It's just how you do it. You do it now and wait and pay for it, or you make that part of the project. And we don't want to just see an empty lot.
No.
You know, if we're going to demo, so in response to your question about the abatement, yes, portables 15 through 22 are variable buildings. We do not vest any money in those buildings for the reason that our true investment will be long-term in replacing them with state construction. The process at that time, which will most likely occur over the summer, will be full containment of that building as it is demoed, which would also include water, to control all the dust. And so there would be no students, no staff on site while that abatement is taking place. So we wouldn't actually abate a building to remodel it, we would just remove it completely, and that's much more cost effective.
Thank you.
I don't know if Carolyn, do you want to add, Carolyn?
There's never enough money.
I would like to add, just on a side note, I'm excited about Yolo and what the 8th grade class is doing there. And I know as soon as they patent their arm, the robotic arm, I'm one that will invest in it, because we never, ever will have schools, unfortunately, that don't have trash that needs to land in the garbage. Thank you.
Thank you.
Question about the high school. Do you include a soccer stadium? I wasn't sure what
Well, actually, what I didn't point out, I don't think we go back, but those 10 acres that are in the back, that actually, not necessarily a stadium, but that would be, there's a space for soccer fields and other fields back there.
One other note, the infrastructure for the irrigation was added around 2010. So the water source for not only the farm, but also for obviously the almond orchard, we actually spec'd an 8-inch line out there coming off of our Rainbird pump system. So we are ready at least to add to the existing irrigation system, which would save on costs.
Yeah, because I think that's a huge need in the high school as we sit right now, is that stadium gets way overused. And it's a community asset, it's a school asset, so I feel like we really need to make sure that there's something that meets that need where the pop warner and whatnot, because that stadium gets kind of beat hard.
Well, and then you make a good point, because really soccer has a whole different field. Football is crowned, and soccer is actually a flat field, and a different size. So they really are better off being on separate properties.
Yeah. And if they'll both get a lot of, this is certainly something we should be talking to our city about, what they're planning and making sure that everything works together. I truly hate the idea of fouling up Benita. Benita's a wonderful small school, and I'm really, for 20% of the opinion of the board, I'd rather see something than add capacity at Benita. Whether that's putting together a magnet program someplace, whether that's putting a K-3 at Diablo so that those kids don't have to ride the bus until they're older. Whether that's looking at, well, we're at the dream stage, but when you turn around and you find 4 years later that what was built as this architectural thing where all the students, that school was built for a certain size, and we almost have to blow up that building and completely replace it to replace what we're getting such great results that we need it from. It's a choice that we have in our district. Somebody doesn't have to come in and say, hey, by the way, we're taking a bunch of your budget, because we're going to open a charter to offer what you don't have. We offer that at Benita. And I just hate to foul it up by putting rather look ahead, and I also think that there's probably gonna be people with our heads on pikes when we show up and say, by the way, we're changing Benita, it's got a long-term,
They've got a lot of time for that,
Yeah.
because unless Rural International and the Yolo suddenly decides that they want to sell off to a developer, and we added another 200 units, we're not gonna see kind of any growth really. And by the time that might happen, it could be that those, you remember, those kids that are up there right now, they may not be there, they may be at Yolo in high school.
Oh, absolutely.
So I think there's, we've kind of see, right now we have a class, we have a big class, fifth graders. We have a split class of fourth and fifth graders, plus also third grade is pretty big, so there's two, but that's kind of, it's a bubble that's kind of going through. We're not seeing that being a need. So these are all kind of thrown up there, it's just kind of that, we can give you a better idea of what we think needs are based on potential enrollment. But there are some things that really have nothing to do with enrollment, like locker room,
absolutely,
tennis court moving,
absolutely.
that kind of stuff. That basically probably needs to be, what kind of a priority is that compared to needs for growth?
Yeah. And then my last question, where do we sit in terms of state money? Because we've had some projects that we've been working on that should have a state match. State matches don't come for, it seems like decades, but maybe I'm just being pessimistic.
We'll wait, we'll file the final paperwork for, there will be a little bit more state matching funds for Barrington and other because we added 2 additional classrooms. So there'll be a little bit more coming from there. I'm just not sure where we are with Benita. When we did the modernization for the cafeteria, we still are owed money from that. And then we have not applied for any, there hasn't been anything else that's been eligible so far.
Okay. But the one at Yolo, that will be eligible.
That will be eligible, yes.
When we're able to apply for it, we will. And I think, that, the good news is that it sounds like under Newsom's governorship that he's going to be a little bit more flexible with that.
So that could be about about $2.5 million coming back for that one.
Yeah, so that starts to be a piece of one of these other projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Burke. Thank you. Strategic action plan, Mr. Football.
Well, this really just kind of leads into basically the next presentation on assessments. Because I just want to remind folks that we're in the first year of a 3-year action plan, and our vision is that all learners graduate college and career ready, embracing the joy of lifelong learning, and all are prepared to be responsible global citizens and leaders. And so it's important every meeting that we focus on pieces of that, and we have metrics that kind of guide our thinking on this. And so what we wanted to go over tonight, and see if we're going to do that, is we want to talk about, the dreaded dashboard. And the reason why is because we want to focus on just the ELA and the math scores. And the reason why the dashboard is important is because that's pretty much really all the community really sees. Now, at the next meeting in February, we will get into the more formative assessments that lead to our prediction of how we will do in April when we have the next round of these tests. And that's things like the DIBELS and the PMA from Stride and some IEPs, which are basically kind of practice exams for the SBAC. But I think it's important for you to see kind of how this dashboard works. And then Ms. Beckworth's going to kind of give you an idea of how you can look at that dashboard. When people ask you questions, you can kind of answer some of those. But we're only going to talk about ELA and math tonight. There's quite a few things on there besides that. You don't need that.
Good evening. We're going to start off with a review of what we're using the data for, first of all. So I presented this, I think, a couple months ago, but when we look at data, we don't just look at the data from SBAC. We look at the data from all of our formative assessments throughout the year. DIBELS, PMAs, our math benchmark scores at Yolo, A through G, PSATs, there's a number of tests that we look at throughout the year. And we do several different things with that data. We use it to inform teachers' instructional decision making. So teachers will look at the data and they will make decisions about how to change their instruction, monitor their instruction, target their instruction for students. We plan lessons, we plan units using that data. We differentiate, provide interventions. We monitor our programs. So for example, the data we gather over time on Math 180 helps drive what type of students we might need in that program, further intervention for those students. Is it being successful? Is it not being successful? So those are some of the things we do, some of the reasons we gather the data in the first place. We never want to just gather data for data's sake. That it's frustrating to teachers, it's frustrating to students, it's frustrating to administrators. So we always want to make sure that we're using the data appropriately. We also need to remember one score never defines a student. A student is not a number. So we always need to look at the whole student. And we need to take into consideration all the various backgrounds. A student who might be a great member of the Newsies squad may not have the best math scores, but they have different talents. So we always need to look at students individually. So I think that's important. I think we do try to do that in our district. I want to just review before the principals start making their presentations of what the SBAC indicators show us. A level 1, it means that a student is not meeting the grade level standards at that one point in time that they were assessed. A level 2 means they're nearly meeting the grade level standards. Level 3 means they've met the grade level standards, and level 4 means they've exceeded the grade level standards. So just keep those in mind. We're always looking for a 3 or above, which means our students have met or exceeded the grade level standards. I'm just reviewing very quickly our district SBAC data. You already saw this graph, but we basically talked about how we're a little bit flat right now, but we're kind of following the same trend as the county and the state. I went to a county workshop on the data, and throughout the county and the state, we're seeing that results have kind of plateaued. And that happens a lot when you're looking at a trend over time. You grow, you kind of plateau, and then you figure out what you need to grow some more. And so the state, county, and our district, we somewhat plateaued. You're going to see at the different sites, there was definitely growth and areas that we need to improve in. And again, in math, pretty much the same picture across the state, county, and district. We were somewhat flatlined, and so one of our goals this year is looking for where are we at with our students? Which students do we really need to focus on to improve this year's SBAC scores, basically, where are we at? I'm gonna walk you through the dashboard live, actually, so hopefully it all works out. I've tried it like 10 times, and I'm worried that it's not gonna work the 11th time that I'm up here in front of all of you. This is the public face. This is open to the public, so we all, whether we whatever we think about the dashboard, it is what the public sees. So I think if we are asked questions about it at the site or as board members, we need to be able to, discuss the dashboard. I need to put my glasses back on. So I have it linked to go right to Newman. And basically, when you first get on the dashboard, you come to what they call the landing page. And it is basically an overall view of what our district looks like with all of the indicators that the state has decided they're going to measure. So they changed it from the pie. Do you remember the pie? I think I talked about the pie. It's now like, I call it a gas gauge. So it goes from red to orange to yellow to green to blue. So in all of the areas, you'll see an indicator, you'll see a gas gauge. The English learner progress isn't going to have any indicator yet because there's not 2 years worth of data. So we have to wait till next year because you have to always compare 2 years. These indicators down here at the bottom are local indicators. They won't have a gas gauge. We either met it or we didn't meet it. And those local indicators are things that we do within our district to measure whatever we're measuring. So Williams measures our facilities, parent engagement, we use a lot of our LCAP surveys to meet those indicators. So those are local indicators. It just gives you some overall information about the district. And then we're gonna focus right here on academic performance, and we're gonna focus on math and ELA. So you can see both indicators show that we're orange. What we're looking at in both ELA and math is a level, I'm kind of using my Portuguese hands now, a level 3 is where we need to be. So we're looking at how far we are as a district on average. They take a score like, let's say the lowest score you can get to be a 3 is 1,500. They're starting to look, they take an average of how far away we are as a district from 1,500. So that 26.9 points below the standard is how far away we are on average from being at that point, that lowest point of a 3. If you look at it in ELA, we're much closer to our kids being a 3 on average than we are in math, which is pretty much common across the state and the county. The maintained means that we didn't grow significantly, but we didn't go backwards significantly either. So we kind of maintained where we were at, and we didn't go backwards, but we grew up. It's a little bit confusing because when you're below, when you're underwater, you're not quite at a 3, you want to decrease. When you're above a 3, you want to increase. So you want to get closer and closer to a 3. You're closing the gap, so that 26 needs to shrink to 24, 19, 18, and then you're going to hit 3, the average distance from 3. And then the same in math. What we look at the bottom, when you're looking at so as you get closer and closer to 3, your gas gauge is going to move closer, move around. Does that make sense? Okay. When you're looking at this equity report, it's basically showing you how our subgroups are doing. So if you look at our subgroups, performance in ELA, a lot of our students are falling right here in the orange. Our white students are yellow, and our green students, we have a subgroup that's green students, it's students who identify as 2 or more races. In order to get an indicator, you have to have at least 30 students in that subgroup. So you'll notice these no performance color, it's because we don't have enough students in that subgroup to get an accurate indicator. So pretty much, I think the best way to explore the dashboard, and you can kind of see, is just to do that. Kind of go on and explore on your own. Justin, the high school, is going to give you some information. He also included the dashboard. I think the high school is our last and final milestone for all of our students. It really is reflective of what we do as a district K all the way up through high school. So it's kind of the culminating data. That data shows us how our kids are prepared to go out into the world, and he actually has some dashboard data to share with you. I'm more than willing to meet with you if you want to look at the dashboard individually or go through it, or you explore it, and if you have questions, we're more than willing to help you, with some of those questions. So, yep, let's get the high school, Mr. Pruitt.
First of all, thank you again for having the opportunity to talk about high school. Don't know if you can see that up there, but that real small writing on the top right there says Future Model School. And we put that in there just in hopes that we hear in a week or so that we made it. So we're planning on it. Linda Jordan says plan on it anyway. But so we are. So we put that on there. This is our dashboard, and I know that it's a look at the past, but it's also an opportunity for our teachers to be very proud of the things they've done, and for our elementaries and junior high to be very proud of how they prepared our students coming to high school. Some of the things that again, the graduation rate, that says 99%, and again, that's that one student that came in their sophomore year, spent 2 days on our campus, and moved somewhere, never enrolled in a school. So that does count against our cohort rate, but at the same time, 99%, that is incredible. Our college and career, the growth we've made there has been awesome as well. So looking at this, it's a moment of pride for our staff to be able to look at that and say, hey, we're doing okay. We're doing well, and we're making strides, and the work that you put in has been worth it. It's paying off. Some of the areas that we need to improve, it's showing yellow in math in yellow and ELA, but it's kind of bizarre. We'll show those scores next. So here's our ELA. When we first took the test in 2000, I think it was it 2015? Our first was 40% meeting and exceeding, and then it went as high as 66 2 years ago, and then down to 55 last year. So there is a little dip from 17 to 18, but as you can see, the trend line overall over the 4 years is growing. Yes?
Is this just the 11th grade test?
11th grade CAPS, and that's why I wanted to make sure I put 4 years, because we have one grade that takes this test, and I think you get a better idea of what's happening at Orange Timba if you do it over time versus, because we're not testing every grade level or multiple grade level. It really is just the juniors. So some of the things we do for ELA, kind of a long list, but I also wanted to represent what our school is doing. Targeted ELD for ELs, but really we do more than that. At the beginning of every year when we schedule for our ELs, we look at every individual student that is an EL and say what interventions and what supports do we have in place? Did it work? Can we pull away some of the supports and still have them successful? Were they successful without the supports? Can they maintain a regular schedule? And that's what we look at every student individually. We have our intervention, I believe we're on our 5th year of running Read 180, and we're getting good results from that. One of the bragging points that we get to talk about is the CIR walkthroughs, which is the curriculum instructional rounds. And that was brought to us, again, through model schools. And that is going to, if we become a model school, that is going to be our presentation. Linda Jordan came to us and said, other schools across the nation have been given the same information, and they've been given the same ability to do what you guys are doing, but no school in our nation is doing it with 100% teacher participation. And we're doing it, and our teachers are just, and they're getting out into other classrooms, they're getting to see what other teachers are doing, what other classrooms are doing, and again, we have 100% of our teachers doing that. And that's, a lot of times, it is unheard of. So we're excited about that. We have the IEPs both in ELA and math, and we're getting the results from that. It's tough with students because sometimes they're not making the connection between taking an IEP and why do I have to do this? I have other things I need to do. And to get them to take that serious. So again, we had some conversations with our juniors today. I didn't take it serious. I had another project I had to work on. And so it's tough to get them to take that serious, but we are starting the conversations. This is important. This is critical to our school, to you individually for your college, and then with especially with even the junior colleges going to the multiple measures, whether or not you're ready for college math, so that this score matters to them now. So that's a good thing. We're continuing with our writing benchmarks across all our English classes. I believe they completed their 2nd round with those already. We have Khan Academy going with our SAT and PSAT prep, and it's connected to their College Board account. So depending on how they did on their PSATs and their SATs, it assigns to them. The problem we're having is we're not getting data back from Khan Academy because they have individual rights, and getting that information back, we aren't really allowed any reports from it except for time on task. Revolution Prep was brought to us through the Revolution K-12, and that's the online tutoring. So every student on our campus has access to an online tutor all hours of the day, and we even have some students logging in during their study whole time. The Literacy Project, again, another one brought back from the model schools. The Sue Brockton, Sue Sackowich from Brockton High School.
Yes.
All my words are timed up. And it's a literacy project, and what that means is every department is doing a writing assessment one time during the year. So by the end of the year, the students will have done this 8 times. Today, I believe the VAPA Tech, all our, basically our electives, our VAPA group, computers, art, ceramics, music, we're all doing their essays today. I got a text from my daughter, doing essay number 4 today. Thanks, Dad. So I know it's working, and they're excited about it, but by the end of their high school career, they will be able to read information, decipher it, and make decisions based on what they read. So, and again, our rigor, relevance, and relationships focus of the month. We just had another collaboration today on that. So, and then Something we've always done is the tutoring before and after school offered by our teachers. And again, now you mentioned the SAT for all juniors and all sophomores. The next one is our math, and this is our biggest area of need, and it looks great with the graph, but when you look at the numbers, 13% met or exceeds to 18%, and the missing part of the story, that means 82% are not meeting or exceeding. So that is a big area of need for us, but we do believe we're on the upward trend. And again, some of the things that we're doing with our math class, our math 2 teachers were out today working on common assessments so that they can discuss how all of our students are doing by each test that they take, and be talking with the other math 2 teacher to find out what's missing, what are they getting, what are they not getting. So there's a lot more discussion going on. One of the great things with the CIR walkthroughs is I had an opportunity to talk to some of our veteran teachers, and I asked, when was the last time you were able to have instructional conversations at the level that you're having them now? And it's been a long time. Some of them have not had that. And what the CIR does is allows teachers to go around, observe other teachers in their classroom with a specific focus. And there will be about 3 to 5 of them, and they'll step out and discuss what they saw. They're focusing on what the student is doing. And then what that does is it makes you go back and look at the lesson plan to get that result of what the students are doing.
Justin, can you find anything like before before high school, that a certain area that everybody seems, or many seem to be very low, that it's like building a foundation and there's this one block that's loose where we're falling down, or is it just?
In math, you mean across the board?
Yeah,
When you're at 82% not meeting, there's a lot of foundational cracks that we need to fill.
no, like
So,
they haven't learned
yeah.
their multiplication tables or.
I don't know that not learning the multiplication tables would really get in the way. I know they struggle with the performance task on the SBAC. That is a difficult one for them. And making the correlation to the real world, there was a student last year that went in and took her SBAC, and she was out in 10 minutes after, which should take you an hour and a half to 2 hours. And I said, what is going on? Well, she says, I just got this one problem, and it talked about rates and all that stuff, and she's like, I don't know what they're talking about, and they wanted me to do slope. I'm like, rate is slope, but they just didn't make that transition to what the vocabulary that they're using on the test to what they're being asked. Did she know how to do slope? Absolutely, but she wasn't able to prove it on that test that day. So, and again, this is conversations we've been starting with our juniors is taking this test serious, because a lot of them like, well, why do I need to take this serious? They just don't get that it is important to them. And so we're starting those conversations with them as well. So I don't know that we've had a true reflection of what they know yet with our 18. I don't know that that truly shows what our students know. I will tell you today, we had Robbie Messer come and give a speech or a presentation to our teachers, and one of his highlights at Orstimba was math. The teachers that made a difference to him in math. Now, will that show on a test score? Absolutely not. But I do think it will show up in the way that he pursues and attacks problems. Yes. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
So, going in, we have 2 slides. The first one will be ELA, and looking at 17, 18. We know that we had growth in certain pockets, and in other areas, we moved students, what I would say would be the wrong direction. But ELA was the area that we are performing the best, and that's been a focus on the literacy piece, getting students talking in the classroom, and some other things will get on the third slide. But again, it's kind of, Kim talked about, you can see with 6th grade, some things are flat, but we know that we need to continue to focus on things with ELA, but overall, that had our areas of biggest growth was in ELA. So on the next slide, with math, again, you can see that in some areas we're flat, we're seeing, in 18 students, essentially are going the wrong direction, although there were pockets where students were moving up in bands, and I would say going from one level to the next level, but overall, we didn't move enough students to then show growth in those students who meet or exceed our standard. So when we get into what we're talking about, what we're doing, As I was listening to kind of Justin's list, you know, there are a lot of parallels, which I think for us as the middle school, obviously feeding into the high school, that's a good thing. When we look at our English language learners, we were talking about, this has to be a group that we target. When we look at last year, how many students we reclassified, Alexi and I spent some time before school started this year, and we got in there and we really looked at some of our students. And we looked at where were the areas that they were struggling and trying to be more strategic about what support or what intervention we provided them with. Was it about reading comprehension? Was it about the students are comprehending but they need more speaking opportunities? So we have two sections of targeted ELD. One section focuses on our students who are level 1 or 2, and then the other section focuses on our students who are level 3. And we know those are students who are coming through middle school and they're coming in as a 3 and they leave as a 3. So that's that group that's kind of stuck. We look at professional development. I was going to point out with our English language learners, we know that going from last year to this year, we reclassified 57 students. So we know that by targeting those students even from last year to this year, that we saw some improvement. Professional development walkthroughs and what we call a lesson study. We work with SCOE on an MOU to facilitate what is a lesson study with our math team. We took that same process, and with our learning directors being a part of that, we're now duplicating that with our ELA team. And what a lesson study, for those of you who have been to model schools and know Weston Kieschnick, we're looking at our outcomes, and I can't help it, strategies, looking at your tools and your plan, and then the rigor relevance piece. So really getting back to that in-depth planning. And I think we've talked about it, that's kind of something we get away from, but we really have got to go back and dig deep on those lessons and be able to evaluate and make changes and move forward with it. So a lesson study is just an in-depth planning of that process. So we're duplicating that with, our goal is to duplicate that with our ELA and history teams. Developing the instructional model that Justin is referring to, we did that as an admin team, and we've been doing that using the CIR, and now our goal is to start using that with our teachers and develop an instructional round model. Our challenge is our schedule looks a little different than Justin's, but we were still able to get it in place with some of our leadership team, and they went out and pulled in some teachers and have been able to get that. Our struggle is we're not able to get it across the board with every single teacher because it's based on when teachers are available to be able to do it. So Math 180, Read 180, we've been using Math 180 for I think a year less than Justin, or Read 180 a year less than Justin's site, but we're using Math 180 this year. We had to really get targeted on who we were going to bring into that class. As a 6-8, the first year or two, we were kind of looking at those kids. Hey, we're sending 8th graders to the high school who aren't ready. So you target that group, but then you're always playing catch up. So we took our students and we started really looking at our 6th graders and trying to catch those kids up, looking at who the 7th and 8th graders in there, and again, getting strategic about, is it a reading comprehension issue, which is what Read 180 does, or works with, and then System 44 looks more at decoding. So again, just being very, very strategic about who those students are and what intervention we're providing. Both the data from Math 180 and Read 180 is showing student growth. So right now we're pretty happy with those results and moving those students forward. Benchmark data review, we again are looking at our schedule and being creative and trying to create an effective and repetitive cycle of looking at data. We sat down with, for example, science, we sat down today and looked at what's called the critical juncture and identified that the students, not all the content in their writing is there, but their writing overall is better. So the process they're using is now transferring from ELA. And 2 years ago, that was a focal point for us, is that students weren't taking what they were talking about in their ELA class and the writing component and transferring that into other classes. And we're seeing a better transfer of that process. And so the data was there to kind of support that with the critical juncture that we looked at. IABs, we're using the IABs, every content area is twice, at least twice, but a lot of them are using it more. They're doing some error analysis, and what that looks like is, because the security with IABs is a little different than the actual SBAC, they can put the question up on the board and then talk to the students about, 22 out of the 30 students, we all missed this program or this problem, and then talking about what drew them off. And I've heard some of the conversations, and it's everything from, I just didn't read the question, all the way through before I started answering it. And some of them where they have to read 2 pieces of text, they're not reading the second piece of text as thoroughly as the first piece of text. So they're doing some error analysis and not just necessarily all the way through an IED to get to the data, but looking at individual problems with the students in the classroom. We use different benchmarks, and they're not listed up there, but MDTP, which is a math benchmark we use with our 8th grade. We use the math inventory, which is part of Math 180. The science curriculum that we're piloting, again, has built-in benchmarks, and we're using those, and that was one that we were looking at today. We are also using Revolution Prep for tutoring with our students, so making sure that our students have access to support outside of the school day. A lot of our teachers, for example, our math program, they're available before school, after school, where students can come in and get some support on individual problems, so there's some tutoring going on there. We have, PSAT is new, and we're doing that now with our 8th graders. And so this will be the 2nd year that we completed it, and then we're getting data reports on that and kind of able to go in and look at that data and make connections there. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to give you a little bit of a different view of some of the scores that we had on the dashboard, in that I thought it was important that we look at cohort scores over time. Okay, since 2015, we had our baseline with the SBAC, and so I started with the 2016 score in 3rd grade as when they first started. We're going to concentrate on level 3 and level 4, which is the met standard or exceeded standard. Pardon me. So we start with ELA, and as you can see, that group of 3rd grade goes to 4th and to 5th. These are basically the same students over time, okay? So in 2016, we had 20% of our students met or exceeded our standards for that, for ELA. And then as we move to 2017, that same group of students rose 11% to 31% in ELA. As we move from 2017 to 2018, they took a little bit of a dip, a 2% hit in the met or exceeded standards, and went to 29%. But overall, as we move from 2016 to 2018, we saw a 9% gain over that cohort of students, excuse me. The reason I think that's important is because one of the things that I listened to as I came back to elementary was why are students not doing well on the test? And a lot of it had to do with the rigor of the test. It changed from the old STAR test, from the CST, to the Smarter Balanced Assessment. And so I wanted to see our students dealing with rigor in the correct way. And we see that we do have some good results here, even though our scores have not been good, okay, in math or ELA. I think we're on the right track. I wanted to track this group of students. These 5th graders that we're talking about are now in 6th grade at Yolo. We'll be able to track them again. But I thought it was important because rigor came up over and over and over as I spoke with staff, not only at the elementary, but also at the middle school. What do you see that gets in the way of a student succeeding on the SBAC? And it was rigor. So luckily, not luckily, but fortunately, we have adopted this framework from ICLE that deals with rigor and relevance. And we're following that to help improve our scores. So I'm happy to say that group of students did well, okay? And they hopefully will progress and doing better as they go through middle school and in high school. But we do have a lot of improvement to make. As Justin said, looking at some of the high school scores in math, we've got 71% of our kids in that 5th grade class that were below that standard, and we want to change that around. Okay? So that was ELA. Let's go back to math. The math, as you can see, will follow that same group of students. Again, 3rd grade 2016, we had 17% of those students that were level 3 or 4. As they moved to 2017, we had a 4% gain, and then we had another modest gain in 2018 by 1% for an overall gain of 5% as they progressed from 3rd through 5th grade at Von Renner. Once again, not great numbers. We have a lot of work to do, but I think working with the rigor and the relevance framework, we are going to be able to turn that around and make them better middle school students as they go in as 6th graders. Ongoing efforts. Carolyn, I gave Carolyn some copies of some of the stuff that we're doing at Von Renner too, so just so you can have it for reference. But we have monthly ICLE focus with meaningful feedback. We have sample forms that we use for walkthroughs that change monthly depending on our focus for the month. This month it happens to be math and making learning connections. And it's a simple form that Mrs. Arteaga and myself use as we walk through classrooms. And we give this form, we make a copy of it, keep it for ourselves, and we give the form to the teacher. And if there's a discussion that needs to take place about how something could change or something that they could share with another colleague, we have that discussion and we do that later. Some of the things that we check on are lesson objectives, discussing the objectives with students, using time effectively, and demonstrating enthusiasm for the subject matter. The last one we just added was the academic discourse, which is academic vocabulary that we've started using since we came back from winter break, introducing academic words every day in the announcements. Those are done school-wide, and then we have one each day for each day of the week, and then we have grade level words that teachers are focusing on with their students so that they can begin to understand the rigor that's going to be needed for the exam. Okay? We have weekly PLC with focus on data review to make strategic instructional changes. So on Tuesdays is our PLC day, and our PE teacher comes and takes the students. Our grade levels are able to collaborate with one another and look at data and make those changes as needed. Number 3, consistent focus on literacy, academic vocabulary across the curriculum, which I think is going to really be a game changer for all of our schools, with the enhanced support of using the technology that you see listed up there, Lexia, Footsteps of Brilliance, Stride, progress monitoring using DIBBLES, and then our big focus this year at Von Renner has been relationship building, because nothing starts, can't really do well in the classroom unless you have a relationship with your students and your parents. That's kind of where we're at. Thank you.
Good evening. So I wanted to just give you guys a little bit of information about Kurt Barrington and our assessments, as well as I want to let you know that it has been an exciting adventure so far. We are 2/3 new, we have 2/3 new staff at our school. So it's exciting in 2 ways, because a lot of our teachers and our staff are new. So they are open to ideas, and so it's given myself and Mrs. Henley an opportunity to really go in there and teach new things. And when they strive and they're hungry for knowledge, that's an opportunity for us. So if you take a look at our Barrington ELA data, you will notice that we're doing pretty good. We're moving in the right direction. If you take a look at our standards met as well as our standards exceeded, we're doing well, right? Correct? Everybody good? You guys give us a love. So we are in the LA moving it towards the right direction of, we do a lot of strategies, informational, things that we're gonna be focusing on at our third slide. So take a look at our map. Math unfortunately isn't, all that, doesn't have that much love yet. But, standard math, take a look, standard math, we went up, right? And we're getting close. And how Mrs. Bencourt mentioned that, this tends to be the norm within our county. So we're not that off, okay? So being that, with that information that we've given, what are we doing? What are our next steps? And what will be our next steps for the next couple of years? We have a 3-year plan at, Heard Barrington already. And a big one is the IUBs. Coming to Heard Barrington, the one thing that I noticed, and information I got from our staff is that they knew terms. They knew what strategies were, but they didn't know the in-depth of the analyzation part of it and what it really meant. Yeah, they've heard of IEPs, they've heard of English learners, they've heard about even CIR at that point. So what we have focused, both Ms. Henley and I, during our collaborations, our staff meetings are not just agenda meetings, they are instructional meetings. And our PLCs is, we've talked about IEPs, the exposure, what's the purpose of it? Building that knowledge. There's a component in IEPs and SBAC that has a list of all your academic vocabulary that students are going to be exposed to in the test. Students are becoming exposed to, teachers are becoming exposed to, letting them know what it is, practice of the application. There's not only IEPs, but there's practice tests. So if students have certain modifications and modifications or accommodations, they're able to practice what that's going to look like. Our special ed team has been real instrumental in that. If they have an IEP, what are the accommodations we need to give them? We've been practicing those. For the data review by teachers, we have gone in and looked at, like Mrs. Luna has stated, as to how are they performing? Why did those students get those questions wrong? What did I do? Is that not part of the instructional focus that I'm doing in the classroom and teachers? So they're really looking at them more in depth. For English language learners, we've been focusing on this from day one. We have identified who our English learners are. We have identified instructional strategies, academic discussions that we've done, building on tier 1, 2, 3 words. But the biggest part that I think our staff has really focused on is that speaking, having them speak, having them practice that language. We have a designated ELD section right now in the afternoon. Our kinder teachers, 2 veteran teachers, both elders, take our English learner students who are schooling. I looked at our information today, and they take what are the most intensive students, as well as they started embedding all of our English learners. So we take them for about 20, 25 minutes and give them direct language support, and then we focus on the writing. And the reason we do that is because when we evaluated our IEP data, we noticed that the areas of deficiency for us were the analyzing presentation and research inquiry, but the communication piece. There's a standard on it that talks about demonstrating effective communication skills. That's what we struggled with. So we figured, why not, what's it, kill a bird with, or what, throw.
Kill, what's
Two birds
kill
with
one
one stone.
Thank you. As an English learner, wasn't my. So we have focused on that with that. The other thing is, we are sending, there's a training coming up of LPAC in the classroom, and the teachers, like I said, I'm so lucky to have teachers, new staff, that they're hungry for knowledge. So they want to know, okay, self-assessment, that's the old test, LPAC's here, what does that mean? What does LPAC mean? Yeah, we reviewed the standards, so forth. being that myself and Mrs. Stanley are new to the site, we were always focusing on relationships, but we really wanted to focus on the learner engagement as in the student perspective. Active participation, what are they doing? Yeah, I can sit here and talk to you and talk to you and talk to you to the face, but what did I just model? I modeled for you guys to be involved with my conversation and for you, and that's what I'm expecting our teachers to do as well. Thank you.
So we'll go ahead and start here with this slide, taking a look right there at those kiddos. Those are the faces behind the scores. As I was making my presentation tonight, I thought, you know, that's the face behind the score. Those are the students that we're teaching, and knowing those students, knowing each one, again, thinking of relationship building, that is something at our school site, being new to Hunt Elementary, something that we have worked on, getting to know those students. So look, if we go ahead and take a look at our data for Hunt Elementary, first off, we have our comparison here between 2017 and 2018, and you can see that we've also hit that plateau that we've seen across the state. You can see there's some areas of weakness, standard not met right there, 44%. So those are areas of focus. One interesting thing to point out in reflecting on these scores is that our population, we have 295 kids, and 50% of our population are second language learners. And so if we think about, well, who is taking the test, right? We've got our 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Well, out of our 4th and 5th grade population alone, 50% of those students are English language learners. And even out of that category, 32% of that 50, they're just at that beginning stage of language learning. They're at 1 or they're at 2. So in reflection of our data, another interesting piece is that we scored higher in listening. So, why are we looking at data? Our data is our why. It's informing our instructional decisions. It's why we do what we do, right? And so the fact that we scored higher in listening at 73.15%, so that tells us something. If we think about the stages of natural language acquisition, the theory of Stephen Krashen, we think about that, we know that that first stage is listening. That's the first stage. So, and then we go on to speaking. So, and we'll talk more about our site plan to help promote and prompt for that speaking. But if we take a look now at our math here, this is our math comparison. And again, you see, there's certain areas here where, you see standard not met at 46% right there at that level 1. And to me, I couldn't help but think, who are those kids that are in that pocket right there? And then, we have a standard, the scaled score. When you look at the scaled scores, our scores are very close. When you look at the nearly met and standard met, that group right there together, it's pretty close. So we're making gains, and we have right there in our math score, we had a 5.5% increase. So that was exciting to see. So, again, just trying to be strategic about how we're doing what we're doing, which leads us to our action plan. So basically our Hunt intervention plan, we do have an intervention plan at Hunt Elementary, which including a teacher, we've got 2 paras, and we have a digital collaboration on that data for the intervention across all grade levels. So any teacher can hop on and see how her student is, or any student is doing, and the support staff and intervention, they'll add notes so that we can always be on the same page. And we know where our students at because they're our students, right? Yes, we claim ownership of all of them. And our students are serviced daily in intervention according to their needs. So we know where they're at, and our intervention plan is constantly updated, and we can provide those supports and be strategic and focused about who needs what support and how they're grouped. And looking next, we have our PLC planning time. We have our PLCs on Thursday, our collaboration time. That is very focused, we're very intentional about the time that we're using. We know it quickly goes by, that 45 minutes. And so one thing that has helped is just as in we digitally collaborate on our intervention plan, we've also done that with our data. So that teachers come and again, they're looking at all students. So it's not just my class, but I'm looking at the entire first grade population and how can we service this group? How can we service that group? How are they doing with dibbles? How are they doing on benchmark? What about strides? So we can look at all these different areas and we can be really focused and intentional about the supports because it's grounded. It's based right here on our data. And let's see, we've got, we also have district support with math on areas of need according to our SBAC results. So we've got, like this week, we've got a coach from SCOE. She's going to be doing instructional support. And it's very targeted, it's very specific, and it's related exactly on concepts and procedures, an area that we knew that we needed support on for our math. And we have ongoing professional development based on the most recent classroom data. I think Lupe said your faculty meetings, they're not what we think of when we think about a faculty meeting. It's not sit down and talk about, you know, the school news, something that can be sent through an email. We're doing professional development. We're collaborating. We've got information ready, and we're growing ideas. We're working together, and we're thinking of next steps. So also in that same area, we have our IAB focus on our areas of need. So we, again, are very intentional about our IAB plan and which IABs we're giving, which assessments, and how we're using that data. CIR walkthroughs, that's another piece that we have at Hunt Elementary. I started a feedback form back in the fall. Our focus was also learner engagement, being new to the site, and the feedback form, I was trying to get in the classrooms a couple times a week to leave the feedback for the teachers, and we're constantly updating and trying to do better, up the ante. And so we were inspired also by Mr. Pruitt with your feedback form. So we actually updated our feedback form and added more information on that, including the rubric for the CIR focus. And on that note too, we have to say that there is a common focus on academic discourse. Because ultimately we want the kids to be able to speak, because that's going to be reflected in their writing. That was an area that we scored lower in, our writing. And so, you know, we want to make sure that if they're able to speak and have academic conversations, that we're giving them the supports that they need to access that high cognitive demand that's required in the assessment. So that common language strategies, we're constantly having conversations about strategies that we can use to bump up instruction to the next level. And again, we have our EL master plan. We have a school-wide plan, and that is very targeted. We basically have 3 different cohorts. So we have basically students are grouped with their cohorts. So we have 2nd and 3rd grouped together, 4th and 5th. And we have 1st grade grouped together. And so it's school-wide. So everybody's sharing the data. And everybody, again, we've got the same format as far as adding information so that you know where your students are with their English language development. So it's really exciting. And the very last piece down below is on parent engagement. I do feel really strongly about my views with parent engagement. I believe it takes a village to raise a child, and I want our parents to be on the same page. And so this data here, it's just a number on a page if we don't share it, and if we don't have purpose and intention behind, and if we don't express that importance to our families. And so I share it at our ELAC meetings, at our SSC meetings, and I reach out to parents because I want them to know this is why we're doing what we're doing, and this is how you can help. And so far the parents and families are very, very receptive to that information, and it makes them feel part. Thank you.
Mrs. Kate is going to share Anita data, and I'll pitch in if I have to. Mrs. Peterson had a family that she had to be at tonight.
Also look at the meeting or exceeding going diagonally, so you can see that the 2017 third graders were at 66% meeting or exceeding their standards in ELA. Then they were at 57% the following year. So it's just going down 2 years. So for another example would be last year's fourth graders, or 2 years ago, 67%, and then they went up to 73%. In math, as you can see, third grade did very well last year, which means I've got a big job this year. Because those are now my kids as a fourth fifth combo class. So we had 2 years ago in math in third grade, there's 43%, and then it went to 51% the following year. So here's what we're focusing on based on what we have learned. We noticed that in ELA, even though a lot of those things are covered in our benchmark units, they just didn't seem to have it down, and it's also, did they understand it in the way that the test asked them about figurative language and understanding Greek and Latin root words, multiple meanings. They also showed that they were lacking a little bit in text structure and features. So when we're looking in social studies or any nonfiction text, we can look at, how is a photo helping us understand this text kind of thing. Opinion writing is also something that's focused on in benchmark, but we're going to make sure we focus a little bit more on that because that was a low area of need too. So third, fourth, and fifth grade will all be working on these things. In math, some of the things in math that we showed that we need to work on more are things that we don't necessarily get to by SBEC time. So we know that we need to fit them in someplace else. So if we have like a math review time or a daily math time where we're putting in, the kids are doing 4 math problems, maybe there's going to be something on coordinates, and we'll give them at least a little taste of that and make sure that they get that. Using equivalent fractions to add and subtract fractions is something that we really hit hard in fourth grade, and I think they work on that in third grade also. One of the things that we've learned from the IABs is students might be asked to say what is an equivalent fraction of 3/6, and so there's not a multiple choice. They can't mark all that applies, they just have to put in a fraction. So that confuses them a little bit because they realize that it could be multiple correct answers and that the test will take any one of those. So those are some other things that we need to work on. Lines and angles are also things that we don't get to until later, so we have to find ways to fit them into our math units before then. So here's what we're working on based on our data. Our tier 1, we have small group interventions in our classrooms. We preview materials, we review materials, class meetings, lots of spiral review. In tier 2, we have before and after school help, recess interventions, all with our instructional aides. We have language for learning, which is designated support for ELD students. We have online programs that the after-school program is also using. And all the teachers communicate with the after-school leaders to tell them about the things that some of the students are needing academically. So the IEPs, we map them out at the beginning of the school year as to when we think would be best to give them, and sometimes we give more than one a month. They not only are teaching the teachers about what the students may need more help in, they are showing the students that these are some of the skills that they can, or some of the tools that are available to them when they are doing the SBAC. And by doing them throughout the year, I feel like once we get to the SBAC, they're much more relaxed about it. The teacher's more relaxed about it too, because he or she knows how to get into the program easily. We get a lot of the glitches out. So for example, at the beginning of the year, some of the tools that we normally have were not available. So we contacted Mrs. Bettencourt, and then she was going to make sure that all those things were there. our CIR focuses so far, so this year have been on academic discussion also and learner engagement. Okay. Thanks.
So I think one of the things that's real critical is that you've heard some common themes, right? If we, almost every site basically does very similar things. However, if we had listed down basically everything that they're doing, we wouldn't be out of here until after midnight. They are spending a lot of time collaboratively working with each other as teachers to really be deliberate and thoughtful about each student and what they need. And so I think that's important to kind of to remember. So I want to reiterate that next meeting, we're going to talk more about basically the formative assessments that lead to our predictions of how we think kids are going to be doing, and also helps us to change instruction on an ongoing basis throughout the year and not just wait until the end. So I think you'll look forward to that. That'll be a little bit more of a broad stroke because there's an awful lot of data that we look at on a regular basis. I hope you enjoyed that tonight.
It's almost like overload. It's almost like overload.
Well, I gotta tell you, I just want to say, one is, and this is, I mean, our principals, I've talked before about having people on the right seat on the bus, and I gotta tell you, we got the right people in the right places right now. And everybody's working very hard.
We have a first reading for transportation routes and services, home and hospital instruction, so that's our homework. And Mr. Smith. Our Appleton. The
President Conforti, members of the board, Superintendent Philpott, I have the privilege of presenting to you tonight awards for attendance. 15. That's how many days there were in December. And with 15, you had all these different things pulling you in different directions. You had final exams. You had grandma coming in, and I want to stay home and visit with grandma because I haven't seen her in 3 months. All these different competing interests, and yet we had a very close race. And so, first off, I will tell you this: there was something about Felbers. Two of the 3 schools have Felbers at them.
The schools have Felbers at them.
That's how it builds suspense. It's not tough. Just so you lighten it up. So first off, the least percentage of chronic absenteeism, that is Von Renner. Congratulations. For the best student average daily attendance for Assembly High School. And last but not least, I'd like to thank the Academy for the best staff attendance for those 15 days in December goes to Barrington.
15 days. Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you.
Action items, consent calendar.
Okay.
The consent calendar items are routine in nature and usually do not require board discussion. Individual items may be removed by board members and presented for discussion in separate action. The consent calendar will be adopted by a roll call vote.
Move to approve. I'll second that.
Mr. Bizarre?
Aye.
Mrs. Hurst?
Aye.
Mr. Wallace?
Aye.
Mrs. Conforti, aye, and Mr. Slaughter is absent. Approve SART reports with alternative education or Simba High School, Yolo Middle School, Oneida Elementary, Hunt Elementary, Von Renner Elementary, and First Barrington Elementary. Motion?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? One absent. Accept VTD audit report. Are we going to have it? Just,
Not much to say about that.
That's
I have
right.
a positive audit report.
That's it, right. A motion,
I'll move approval.
seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Accept building fund measure B, financial and performance audits. A motion, seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. One absent. Approve board government's handbook. So moved. Want to double check? A second?
Please note the new cover to it.
Yes,
that,
I'm very
that
nice.
Joanne Lamas actually kind
Oh,
of put together, and I appreciate that update.
All in favor?
That was moved by Rose and seconded by Tim.
Yes. Aye. Opposed?
Okay.
One absent. Overnight FFA to Modesto, February 8th through 9th. So moved. A second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? One absent. Future agenda items, we're going to, the governor's budget release, review facilities plans, and every student succeeding. And Mr. Philpott.
Well, I'm just going to focus on our school ready initiative and specifically the footsteps to brilliance. And I know that Mrs. Hurst, you couldn't wait, but it's not. This morning, actually, well, I should back up a little bit. Before winter break, we were at just over 11 million. Came back from winter break over 12 million. This morning we were at 13.9, and a few minutes ago 14.5 million. So just to kind of also just kind of speak about the the elementary sites actually that are participating with this and stuff. A little competition out there. Ms. Robles. However, I will point out that that when you take into consideration the number of students, TK3, who are really participating at the sites, I hate to tell you, Mrs. Robles, but Bonita beat you out just a little bit. 20,000 words per student at Bonita, 18,000 words at Barrington. However, Barrington beat out Bonita in the comprehension category with over 80% comprehension, which is really terrific. So what I'm afraid of is that we're probably going to be, that was the goal, originally 8 million, we reset it for 16, looks like we're going to hit 16 pretty soon, we'll have to reset it again. It's costing us cookies constantly, and a barbecue in March, but great job on that, and I'm looking forward to that.
Wow. This is what makes us great. It really is. Mr. Bizarre.
I did all my talking
Mrs. Hurst.
Oh, well, I didn't do all my talking. Okay, since Rotary since you announced Rotary's speech contest, I have to announce Lions Clubs. And so on February the 6th, you're invited to the old chamber building behind the police station. 5:30 doors open and they close promptly at 6 for our local speech contest for Lions Club. And then on March 6th, the next level is held at our place for Lions Club meeting, same place, same time. And then I also need to kind of make certain that if there are any students or anyone out there that you have to realize that CPR classes are held for free at our fire station, but you have to pre-register. Last but not least, I have to start announcing it now, Safe Center Babysitting Clinic will be coming up in June. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back.
Mr. Wallace.
Type too slow. Babysitter. June. Okay. Unfortunately, I have my own notes for this. I talked about the CIR that sounds like everybody's doing, but certainly being done in high school. And something that really came away from me, that doesn't happen without an underlying level of trust when you start. There's something going on in the organization that those people trusted each other enough. It'll build as it go on, but they trusted each other enough to start. If you think they're gonna get stabbed in the back, you certainly don't hand somebody a knife. And if you think they're going to mistreat you, you don't. Something I looked into a little bit, we're doing a lot of looking and thinking about mental health, and as a statewide kind of concept, I want to be careful that we don't step on the counties. The counties have always been our mental health provider, and we're now looking to carve out some money for schools to be providing mental health care. Having been in the healthcare industry before, or at least veterinary clinic before, don't envy going into that industry, but I also want to make sure that we're not cutting off the counties. And so I had a quick chat with our supervisor, Jim DiMartini. It doesn't seem like it's going to be a big deal, but I think it's something we have to keep an eye on, something I'll keep an eye on as I do my CSBA stuff. Also talked to Supervisor DiMartini. There was some conversation about maybe there's some money to get the pool going in Crow's Landing. And it doesn't sound like, it kind of sounded like things are there, they're ready, the county's bringing this down. It doesn't really sound like that. It sounds like if we want to get that pool up, it's going to have to be a community-based effort more so than something that's set in place by the county. Some things that came up in the conversation about what you guys are doing. Taking successful models and spreading them. A lot of what I heard us talking about, things like communication, things like looking at and assessing data, representing data. These aren't test skills, they're life skills. I'm kind of excited that what we're looking at is really stuff that people stick with forever. Cool on the digital collaboration stuff. And what I heard from a lot of you is this focus on evaluation. And certainly our teachers are in the classroom and they're doing instruction, and our administrators are doing evaluation. And so just really excited about all that. And things are really exciting, but I think we also have to not go home and go to bed early because everything's great. What we came across over and over again, half of our kids don't meet standards. That's where we need to focus and thought on academic and student achievement. Half of our students walking in and out of our classroom don't meet the standards. That's the goal we're given, but I'm not satisfied to go home at the end of the day and say that's okay. And I don't think anybody else in the room is either. But it's something that we have to think about. We like to be positive, but
I'd like to thank everybody for, one, coming here, for watching our students who are brilliant. And even though we continually strive, we need to give them the reassurance that they're doing a good job too. And also our parents, sometimes they get the bad end of it, they hear well, your child isn't doing this. Thank you for the board for completing our evaluation. Hopefully we'll take many steps forward and have a great year. And Sterling, thank you very much, really, especially for staying late. Thanks. And the other person that we don't ever usually say is Mrs. Fox, thank you for everything, especially when